People often believe the quietest person in the room is the weakest. But on the night Maya Johnson was pushed to the ground in front of strangers, they were about to learn that silence was never the same as surrender. Before we continue, tell us where you are watching from in the comments below. And if you believe every person deserves respect regardless of their job or background, make sure to like this video and subscribe. Now, back to Maya Johnson. The golden lights of the Bellagio Crown restaurant reflected beautifully across the polished marble floors, creating the illusion of a perfect evening. Crystal glasses sparkled above expensive tables, soft music filled the air, and wealthy guests laughed without a care in the world. But behind the elegant walls was a reality most customers never noticed. People like Maya existed in the background. She carried plates. She refilled glasses. She cleaned up after people who never learned her name. For almost 2 years, Maya had mastered the art of becoming invisible. Her dark skin, gentle smile, and quiet personality made her easy for people to overlook. And honestly, that was exactly how she wanted it. Invisible meant safe. Invisible meant keeping her job. Invisible meant she could continue paying for her younger brother's medical school dreams. That night started like every other shift. Maya moved between tables with practiced grace, balancing a tray filled with expensive drinks she could never afford to taste. She apologized when customers bumped into her. She smiled when managers criticized her. She accepted rude comments because she understood something many people never had to learn. Sometimes survival requires patience. But everything changed when Travis Cole walked through the restaurant doors. He was the kind of man who believed money gave him permission to disrespect anyone around him. His expensive jacket, loud voice, and arrogant confidence immediately drew attention. Everyone noticed him. Everyone except the people who should have stopped him. Travis sat at the bar with several friends, drinking heavily and laughing louder with every glass. Maya approached with a professional smile. "Good evening, sir. Can I get you anything else?" Travis looked at her slowly, not like a customer looking at a server, but like someone searching for something to use. "You people always act like you're better than you are," he muttered. Maya froze for half a second, but she lowered her eyes and continued doing her job. She had heard worse before. Much worse. She turned to leave, hoping the moment would disappear. It didn't. Travis grabbed his glass and intentionally knocked it over, sending dark liquid across the polished bar. "Look what you did," he said loudly. Several guests turned around. Maya looked at the spilled drink, then back at him. "Sir, I believe the glass was knocked over. I'll clean it up immediately." That answer only made him angrier. He wanted fear. He wanted embarrassment. He wanted everyone to see him control someone who couldn't fight back. Before Maya could step away, Travis reached forward and shoved her hard against the wooden bar. The impact sent a sharp pain through her shoulder. A glass beside her fell and shattered across the floor. The music stopped. Conversations disappeared. Phones came out. Some people watched with shock. Others watched like it was entertainment. Maya stood there, struggling to breathe, her hand pressed against the edge of the bar as tiny pieces of crystal surrounded her feet. And then, from the darkest corner of the restaurant, a chair slowly moved backward. A man who had been watching everything finally stood. Daniel Walker, the Korean Mafia boss known throughout the city for his cold reputation, placed his glass down calmly. His yellow skin, tattoos visible along his neck beneath his black suit collar, made his presence impossible to ignore. He walked forward without rushing, without anger, without fear. The entire restaurant went silent as he looked at Maya, then at Travis. And with a voice colder than the marble beneath their feet, he said 3 words that changed her life forever. "Fight back, girl." Sometimes the person everyone ignores is the only person brave enough to protect the truth. Long before Maya Johnson stood in front of a powerful Korean Mafia boss and heard the words, "fight back," she was just a woman trying to survive one difficult day at a time. At 26 years old, Maya had already learned a lesson that many people never understood. The world rarely notices those who serve others. Every morning, she woke before sunrise in her small apartment, prepared breakfast for her younger brother, and checked her schedule before heading to another long shift at Bellagio Crown restaurant. She worked because someone had to pay the bills. She worked because her brother's future depended on her. And she worked because giving up was never an option. To the wealthy guests who entered the restaurant every night, Maya was simply another waitress in a black uniform carrying expensive plates. They noticed the luxury around her. They noticed the crystal chandeliers, the designer suits, and the elegant atmosphere. But they rarely noticed the woman moving quietly between their tables. They never saw the tired eyes behind her polite smile. They never knew how many sacrifices were hidden behind every "have a wonderful evening." Maya had become an expert at staying invisible, not because she lacked confidence, but because attention often brought problems. She had learned that arguing with arrogant customers could cost her a paycheck. Speaking too loudly could make managers label her as difficult. Standing up for herself sometimes meant risking the very thing keeping her family safe. So she swallowed her frustration and kept moving. But there was one thing Maya never lost: her sense of right and wrong. That was what separated her from the people who looked down on her. On the night everything changed, she arrived at Bellagio Crown Restaurant expecting nothing more than another exhausting shift. The manager complained about timing. A customer complained about a forgotten order. The kitchen was overwhelmed. Yet Maya continued working with quiet professionalism. She had no idea that someone had already entered the restaurant looking for her. Travis Cole sat at the bar surrounded by expensive drinks and loud laughter. He was not impressed by the restaurant's elegance. He was impressed by power, by fear, and by making people uncomfortable. Men like Travis enjoyed finding someone they believed could not fight back. When Maya approached his table with a fresh drink order, he watched her carefully. Not because he respected her, because he was searching for weakness. "You're the one who served the private table earlier, right?" he asked. Maya paused. "Yes, sir. Is there anything else I can help you with?" Travis smiled, but there was no kindness in it. "Maybe." His eyes moved toward the small envelope hidden beneath the serving tray she carried. Maya noticed his expression change. For the first time that evening, she realized this was not about a drink. This was not about bad service. Someone had been watching her. And somewhere in the shadows of Bellagio Crown Restaurant, the Korean Mafia boss who had just told her to fight back already knew something Maya did not. The attack had never been random. Daniel Walker's command did not sound like encouragement. It sounded like a test. The entire restaurant waited for Maya Johnson to do something, anything. Some expected her to cry. Others expected her to apologize, as she had probably done countless times before. Travis Cole certainly expected her to stay exactly where she belonged, frightened and silent. But Daniel never took his eyes off her. There was no anger on his face, no urgency, only patience. It was the patience of a man who believed true strength could never be borrowed. It had to be discovered. Maya's breathing remained uneven as she slowly lifted her head. Her shoulder throbbed where it had slammed into the wooden bar. Tiny pieces of shattered crystal glittered around her shoes while a thin line of blood traced its way down her fingers. The room felt impossibly quiet. Even the bartender had stopped moving. She looked first at Travis, then at Daniel. "I can't fight him," she whispered. Daniel nodded slightly. "I know." Travis laughed loudly enough for everyone to hear. "See? I told you." Several of his friends joined the laughter, eager to prove they belonged on the stronger side. Daniel ignored every one of them. "Who told you fighting means throwing a punch?" he asked calmly. Maya frowned. She didn't understand. Daniel took one slow step closer. "Standing up is sometimes the hardest fight you'll ever win." His words settled deep inside her, though she wasn't sure why. She had spent years surviving by staying invisible. Every instinct told her to apologize, clean the broken glass, and hope the night would end. But another voice, one she had buried long ago, began whispering beneath the fear. Travis leaned closer until Maya could smell the alcohol on his breath. "You're wasting everyone's time," he sneered. "Give me what you're hiding." Maya's eyes widened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The envelope." His smile disappeared. "The old man gave it to you." For the first time that evening, Maya realized the attack had never been about spilled whiskey. It had never been about embarrassing a waitress. Travis had been watching her long before she approached his table. Her thoughts raced backward through the evening. Less than 20 minutes earlier, an elderly customer wearing a gray overcoat had quietly stopped her beside the private dining hallway. His hands had trembled as he slipped a small sealed envelope beneath her serving tray. "Please keep this safe until midnight," he had whispered. "Don't let anyone see it." Before Maya could ask a single question, he disappeared through the restaurant's side corridor. She had assumed he was simply confused. Now she understood he had been terrified. Daniel noticed the realization crossing her face. "You're beginning to see it," he said quietly. Maya looked down at the tray she still held tightly against her body. Hidden beneath the folded linen napkin rested the envelope. She had completely forgotten it after being attacked. Travis took one aggressive step forward. Enough games. His hand reached toward the tray. Before he could touch it, Daniel moved. Not fast. Not dramatically. He simply stepped between them. Travis instinctively stopped. Something in Daniel's calm expression carried far more weight than shouting ever could. You came here for her, Daniel said. But you stayed because of that envelope. Travis remained silent. Daniel's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly, which means someone else is waiting. As if answering his words, one of the restaurant's front doors opened slowly. A man wearing a maintenance uniform entered carrying a toolbox in one hand. Nobody noticed him except Daniel Walker. And that was exactly how the stranger wanted it. The maintenance worker walked with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly where he belonged. His gray uniform blended perfectly with the restaurant staff, his toolbox hanging loosely at his side, his eyes never lingering on any customer long enough to attract attention. Most of the guests never looked at him twice. They were too busy watching the confrontation between Travis Cole and Maya Johnson. But Daniel Walker noticed him the instant he crossed the entrance. Daniel had spent too many years reading rooms where one careless glance could cost a life. This man wasn't looking for broken equipment. He was measuring distances. Maya followed Daniel's gaze and finally noticed the newcomer. There was nothing unusual about him at first. He looked like any ordinary maintenance employee called to fix a problem. Yet something deep inside her whispered that he had arrived at exactly the wrong moment. Travis smiled again. His confidence returned almost immediately. See, he said softly. Things are about to get much easier. Daniel heard every word. He looked back at Travis with an expression so calm it almost seemed detached. You weren't the plan, he said quietly. You were the distraction. Travis stopped smiling. For a brief second, surprise flickered across his face before disappearing again. That tiny reaction was all Daniel needed. He had guessed correctly. Maya's heart pounded inside her chest. She tightened her grip on the serving tray. Hidden beneath the folded linen napkin rested the sealed envelope the elderly man had entrusted to her less than half an hour earlier. Until now she had believed it was simply an unusual favor. Suddenly it felt much heavier, much more dangerous. The maintenance worker continued walking toward the center of the dining room. His pace never changed. He didn't rush. He didn't hesitate. He simply stopped a few tables away from Daniel and quietly placed his toolbox on the polished floor. Then he looked directly at Maya. Miss Johnson, he said politely, I believe you're holding something that belongs to someone else. The restaurant became completely silent. Maya swallowed hard. I don't know what you mean. Of course you do. His smile never reached his eyes. Daniel stepped slightly in front of Maya without making the movement obvious. It was subtle enough that most customers never noticed, but Maya immediately understood what he was doing. He had become a shield without announcing it. Who sent you? Daniel asked. Nobody you need to concern yourself with. Daniel almost smiled. Wrong answer. Before anyone could react further, the maintenance worker slowly opened his toolbox. Instead of tools, there was only a compact black handgun fitted with a suppressor. Gasps spread across the dining room. Several guests ducked beneath their tables. Crystal glasses trembled as someone screamed near the entrance. The stranger calmly raised the weapon toward Maya. Put the envelope on the floor, he said. Nobody else has to get hurt. Maya froze. Every instinct told her to let go of the envelope. She wasn't brave. She wasn't trained. She was just a waitress who had wanted to finish her shift and go home. Daniel never looked away from the gunman. Maya, his voice remained steady. Listen to me. She turned toward him. Fear makes people obey, Daniel said. Courage makes them think. Maya forced herself to breathe. Her hands were shaking, but her mind slowly cleared. She looked from the gun to the envelope, then back at the stranger. Something suddenly felt wrong. If he truly wanted the envelope, why hadn't he taken it while she was unconscious after being shoved into the bar? Why wait until now? The answer arrived before anyone spoke another word. Somewhere outside the restaurant, the building lights suddenly went dark. Darkness swallowed Bellagio Crown Restaurant in an instant. One heartbeat earlier, crystal chandeliers had bathed the dining room in warm golden light. The next, every table disappeared into black silence. A chorus of frightened voices echoed through the room as guests instinctively ducked beneath tables or reached for loved ones. Somewhere in the darkness, a wine glass shattered against the marble floor. Maya Johnson froze where she stood, clutching the serving tray tightly against her chest. Beneath the folded linen napkin, the sealed envelope suddenly felt heavier than ever. Her pulse pounded so loudly she could barely hear anything else. Then Daniel Walker's voice cut cleanly through the confusion. "Stay where you are." He didn't shout. He didn't panic. Yet somehow every word carried absolute authority. Maya obeyed immediately. She couldn't see him anymore, but hearing his calm voice steadied her racing thoughts. Across the room, Travis Cole took advantage of the darkness. He lunged toward where Maya had been standing only seconds earlier, convinced he could snatch the envelope before anyone reacted. His outstretched hand found nothing but empty air. Daniel had already anticipated the move. In the darkness, years of experience mattered more than sight. He had memorized the room the moment he entered. The distance between tables, the position of the bar, the likely escape routes. Most importantly, he had memorized where Maya stood before the lights disappeared. A dull thud echoed through the restaurant as someone collided with a table. Another sound followed immediately, the toolbox hitting the floor. The maintenance worker had moved first. Daniel moved second. A brief struggle lasted no more than 2 seconds before another heavy impact shook the room. Then everything became still again. Maya held her breath. Somewhere nearby, she heard slow footsteps approaching. "Daniel," she whispered. "I'm here." Relief washed over her. Just as she exhaled, the emergency backup generators hummed to life. Dim blue lights flickered across the ceiling, replacing the warm elegance of the restaurant with a cold, metallic glow. The scene looked completely different now. Broken glass covered the floor. Chairs had overturned. Several guests remained crouched behind tables, too frightened to stand. The maintenance worker lay unconscious beside his open toolbox, the handgun several feet away. Daniel stood over him, his black suit untouched, the tattoos along his neck partially visible beneath his collar. But one person was missing. Travis Cole. Daniel turned slowly toward the rear service hallway. The swinging kitchen door moved gently back and forth. He had escaped. One of Daniel's security men hurried into the dining room. "Sir, the back exit." Daniel nodded once. "He's running." Maya looked toward the hallway. "Shouldn't we stop him?" Daniel's eyes remained fixed on the moving door. "No." She frowned, confused. Daniel finally looked at her. "People like Travis don't run without a destination." Maya stared at him. "You mean, he's leading us?" At that exact moment, one of the restaurant's waiters burst through the kitchen entrance, completely out of breath. "Mr. Walker," he shouted. "The old gentleman." Daniel stepped toward him immediately. "What happened?" "He's gone." The young waiter struggled to breathe. But before he disappeared, he left something on the staff table. The waiter unfolded a small white napkin with trembling hands. Across the center, written in hurried black ink, was a single sentence. Daniel read it once. His expression changed almost imperceptibly. Then he handed the napkin to Maya. She looked down at the handwritten message. Her blood ran cold. "Trust the waitress, not the police." Rain covered the city streets as Daniel Walker followed the trail left behind by Travis Cole. The Bellagio Crown restaurant remained sealed behind him, but the night had changed completely. What started as a simple act of cruelty against a waitress had revealed something much larger. Maya Johnson was no longer just a witness. She was now connected to a secret powerful enough to make dangerous people move in the shadows. Daniel stepped through the back exit into the narrow alley behind the restaurant. His security team followed silently, scanning every corner. The wet pavement reflected the fading lights from the building, creating a mirror of gold and black beneath their feet. Maya stood near the doorway, watching everything unfold. She had never been around people like Daniel before. People who could turn fear into silence with nothing more than a look. Yet despite his reputation, the only thing she had seen from him tonight was restraint. He had protected her without making her feel powerless. That was something she didn't understand. "Why are you helping me?" Maya finally asked. Daniel stopped walking. For a moment, the cold expression everyone feared disappeared. "Because someone decided your life was worth less than an object they wanted." His eyes moved toward the dark alley ahead. "And I don't tolerate people who confuse weakness with kindness." Maya lowered her gaze. She had spent years hearing the world tell her she was not important. Tonight, for the first time, someone powerful looked at her like her existence mattered. A sudden movement caught Daniel's attention. One of his men raised a hand. Everyone stopped. A few seconds later, they found the back door of the restaurant's storage area slightly open. It had been locked earlier. Daniel approached carefully. Inside the small room, everything appeared untouched except for one thing. A black envelope rested on the metal shelf. Maya recognized it immediately. "That's not mine," she whispered. Daniel picked it up without opening it. His expression changed slightly. "No." He looked at the handwriting on the front. "It was meant for me." Before he could say more, Maya noticed something else. A small security monitor in the corner flickered back to life. The screen showed footage from earlier that evening. Not from the dining room. From the private hallway where the elderly man had approached her. They watched silently as the old customer handed Maya the original envelope. But the footage revealed something neither of them expected. The man was not alone. Someone had been following him. A tall figure wearing a dark coat had stopped several feet away, watching the exchange. Daniel leaned closer to the screen. His face became colder. He recognized the person standing in the shadows. "You know him?" Maya asked quietly. Daniel didn't answer immediately. His silence was enough. "Who is he?" she pressed. Daniel turned off the monitor. "Someone who should have been gone a long time ago." The words created a new fear inside her. The danger was no longer just Travis Cole. Travis had only been a piece of something bigger. Daniel opened the black envelope carefully. Inside was a single photograph and a handwritten note. He looked at the image for several seconds before his expression hardened. The photograph showed a meeting between powerful businessmen, police officials, and someone Daniel trusted more than anyone. On the back of the photo, words were written in red ink. "Your closest ally betrayed you." Daniel stared at the message. Maya watched his reaction and realized something important. For the first time that night, the Korean Mafia boss was not looking at an enemy. He was looking at a betrayal. And somewhere in the city, the person responsible already knew Daniel Walker had found the first piece of the truth. The photograph remained in Daniel Walker's hand long after Maya Johnson finished reading the message written on the back. "Your closest ally betrayed you." For simple words. Yet they carried enough weight to shake a man who had spent years building an empire where trust was more valuable than money. Maya watched him carefully. Until now, Daniel had appeared almost impossible to unsettle. He spoke calmly. He moved with purpose. Even danger seemed unable to disturb his composure. But the look in his eyes as he stared at the photograph was different. It wasn't fear. It was disappointment. The kind that only comes when betrayal wears the face of someone once considered family. "Who is he?" Maya asked quietly. Daniel folded the photograph and slipped it into his coat pocket. "Someone I trusted with my future." His answer was short, but the silence that followed spoke louder than any explanation. One of Daniel's security men entered the storage room carrying a tablet connected to the restaurant's surveillance system. "Sir," he said, "we recovered additional footage." Daniel accepted the device. The video showed Travis Cole leaving the restaurant through the rear exit immediately after the blackout. Instead of running randomly into the alley, he walked directly toward a black SUV parked across the street. Someone inside rolled down the passenger window. Travis leaned inside for only a few seconds before stepping back. Then the SUV drove away without him. Maya frowned. Why would they leave him? Daniel replayed the clip twice before answering. Because Travis was never important. He enlarged the image of the driver. Rain and darkness blurred the face beyond recognition, but one detail remained unmistakable. A silver ring shaped like a dragon glimmered briefly on the driver's hand as it rested against the steering wheel. Daniel's expression hardened. He had seen that ring before. Years ago, in meetings attended only by the people he trusted most. "The dragon," he whispered almost to himself. Maya looked at him. "What does it mean?" Daniel took a slow breath. "It means someone from my past has been planning this for a very long time." Before she could ask another question, the tablet emitted a soft notification. A hidden file had automatically uploaded from one of the restaurant's private security cameras. Daniel opened it immediately. This footage came from outside the building nearly an hour before the attack. It showed the elderly man entering Bellagio Crown Restaurant carrying the original envelope. A second figure appeared several meters behind him, keeping a careful distance. The stranger never entered the restaurant. Instead, he remained outside speaking on a phone. Maya leaned closer to the screen. "Can we hear what he said?" Daniel's security expert enhanced the audio. Static filled the room before a few broken sentences became clear. The waitress has it. Don't move until midnight. Mr. Walker must be present. The recording ended abruptly. Maya slowly looked toward Daniel. They wanted you here. Daniel nodded once. Everything tonight was designed to bring me into this. He looked toward the rain-covered windows of the storage room, which means the envelope was never the real objective. Maya felt a chill run through her body. Then what is? Daniel's answer came without hesitation. Me. The room fell silent. Outside, thunder rolled across the city skyline. Daniel slipped the photograph back into his coat, his eyes colder than they had been all evening. If they're willing to build an entire trap just to bring me here, he said quietly, they're already waiting for the next move. At that exact moment, one of his guards received an urgent call through his earpiece. His face lost all color. Sir, he said carefully, we just found the elderly man. Daniel looked up. Is he alive? The guard hesitated for only a second. Barely. And he keeps asking for you by name. The ambulance waited beneath flashing lights at the end of the narrow alley, its engine humming softly against the steady rhythm of falling rain. Daniel Walker climbed inside without hesitation, Maya Johnson following close behind. The elderly man lay on the stretcher with an oxygen mask covering part of his face. His breathing was shallow, his gray coat stained with rain and dust, but his eyes opened the moment Daniel stepped beside him. Recognition flickered across the old man's tired face. Daniel, he whispered, barely audible. Daniel leaned closer. Samuel. Maya froze. The name answered a question she had been carrying since the beginning of the night. This was the same man who had entrusted her with the envelope. Samuel Ross struggled to raise one trembling hand. Daniel immediately took it. I thought. Samuel paused to catch his breath. I thought I'd have more time. Daniel's usually unreadable face softened for the first time that evening. You should have come to me years ago. A faint smile crossed Samuel's lips. If I had, they'd have killed us both. Maya remained silent, watching two men who clearly shared a history far deeper than business. Samuel slowly turned his gaze toward her. You protected it. Maya nodded. I didn't know what it was. Exactly. Samuel's tired eyes filled with quiet gratitude. That's why you were the safest person to carry it. Daniel looked down at the sealed envelope, still resting securely inside Maya's jacket. Tell me who sent Travis. Samuel closed his eyes briefly. When he spoke again, every word seemed to cost him strength. The dragon isn't a gang. Daniel remained perfectly still. It's a council. Samuel nodded weakly. Men with money, judges, politicians, businessmen, they built it years ago. Maya felt her heartbeat quicken. Everything was becoming larger than she had imagined. Samuel looked directly at Daniel once more. You trusted one of them. Daniel said nothing. He didn't need to. Samuel understood immediately. You know, Daniel finally nodded. I saw the photograph. Samuel's breathing became more difficult. The USB, he whispered. Don't let them destroy it. Maya instinctively placed one hand over the envelope beneath her jacket. Samuel smiled faintly. Good. Suddenly, the heart monitor inside the ambulance emitted a sharper tone. The paramedic leaned forward, checking Samuel's pulse while urging everyone to step back. Samuel reached out one last time toward Daniel. Pier, he whispered. 17. Daniel leaned closer. What happens there? Samuel's lips moved again. Only 3 words escaped clearly. Trust no one. His hand slowly slipped from Daniel's grasp. The monitor continued its steady rhythm, but Samuel no longer spoke. The paramedics quickly surrounded him, urging Daniel and Maya outside to continue treatment. Neither of them resisted. They stood silently beneath the cold rain as the ambulance doors closed. Maya looked toward Daniel. Do you think he'll survive? Daniel stared at the rain-covered vehicle for several long seconds before answering. I don't know. His voice remained calm, but something had changed. The uncertainty in those 3 words revealed more emotion than any visible anger ever could. One of Daniel's security men approached quickly, holding a small evidence bag. Sir. Inside was a key. Old brass. Worn from years of use. Attached to it was a faded metal tag stamped with a single inscription. Locker 117. Pier 17. Daniel looked toward the dark harbor barely visible beyond the rain. Samuel hadn't just given them a warning. He had left them one final destination. Somewhere inside Pier 17, the rest of the truth was still waiting. Pier 17 stood silent beneath the pale glow of approaching dawn. Thick fog drifted across the abandoned docks, wrapping old warehouses and rusted shipping containers in a blanket of gray. Waves rolled gently against the wooden pilings below, their steady rhythm the only sound breaking the morning stillness. Daniel Walker stepped onto the weathered pier with measured confidence, the old brass key marked Locker 117 resting in his palm. Maya Johnson walked beside him, the original envelope still tucked safely inside her jacket. Neither of them spoke. Samuel Ross's final words echoed in both their minds. Trust no one. The storage lockers lined the far wall of an abandoned freight terminal. Most were covered in rust, forgotten by time. Locker 117 stood near the end of the row, its faded paint barely visible beneath years of salt and moisture. Daniel inserted the brass key. The old lock resisted for a moment before opening with a dull metallic click. Inside rested a small fireproof case. Nothing more. Maya looked toward Daniel. Do you think this is it? Daniel carefully lifted the case onto a nearby wooden crate. Samuel didn't survive this long protecting something ordinary. He entered a 6-digit combination etched onto the back of the brass key. The lid slowly opened. Inside lay a USB drive, several notarized financial documents, and a handwritten journal. Daniel picked up the journal first. Every page contained names, dates, account numbers, photographs, and handwritten notes documenting years of corruption involving influential businessmen, public officials, and criminal financiers. Near the final page, one photograph caught Maya's attention. It showed Daniel standing beside a sharply dressed businessman during a charity event years earlier. The same silver dragon ring gleamed on the man's finger. Daniel quietly closed the journal. Richard Lawson. Maya looked at him. Your closest ally? Daniel nodded. My financial advisor. My business partner. The man I trusted to build legitimate companies while I tried to leave my old life behind. Before either of them could speak again, headlights swept across the fog. 3 black luxury vehicles rolled slowly onto the pier before stopping several yards away. Doors opened almost simultaneously. Richard Lawson stepped forward, perfectly dressed despite the early hour, the silver dragon ring still visible on his right hand. He smiled as though greeting an old friend. I was hoping Samuel would lead you here, Richard said calmly. Daniel remained still. He did. Richard's eyes shifted toward Maya. You've caused more trouble than you realize, Miss Johnson. Maya didn't lower her gaze this time. She remembered Daniel's words inside the restaurant. Standing up was its own kind of fight. Richard extended one hand. Give me the case. Daniel closed the lid gently instead. No. Richard sighed. Then this becomes more difficult than necessary. At that moment, Daniel's phone vibrated once. He glanced briefly at the screen before slipping it back into his pocket. Richard noticed the movement and smiled confidently. Calling for help? Daniel shook his head. No. He looked directly at Richard. Sending the truth. Richard's expression changed for the first time. Daniel calmly held up the USB drive. 5 minutes ago, encrypted copies of every file in this case were transmitted to federal investigators, 3 independent news organizations, and multiple secure servers. Silence fell across the pier. Richard slowly lowered his hand. The realization settled across his face with crushing clarity. Destroying the evidence no longer mattered. The truth could not be erased. Maya looked toward Daniel with quiet admiration. He had won the fight long before stepping onto the pier. Moments later, sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder with every passing second. Richard looked toward the approaching lights, then back at Maya. She stood taller than she had inside the restaurant only hours earlier. She was no longer the frightened waitress everyone ignored. Daniel smiled faintly as the first rays of sunrise broke across the harbor. They shoved you against a bar because they thought you were powerless, he said softly. Today they learned dignity is stronger than fear. Maya returned the smile as golden lights spread across the water. For the first time in a long time, she no longer felt invisible. And from that morning forward, no one who witnessed her courage ever called her just a waitress again.